All right. Before we officially get started, we are required to inform all attendees that this session is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be shared on the Margaret A. Davidson Graduate Fellowship website. Thank you all for your interest in learning about the Margaret A. Davidson Graduate Fellowship. My name is Chris Catalinas, and I'm contracted by Linker to support the team at the NOAA Office for Coastal Management that coordinates this fellowship program. And thank you to those members of the team who are joining us as well today. A few housekeeping items before we begin. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded. And for questions, please use the chat box. You can type your questions into the chat box at any point during the webinar. You don't have to wait until the end of the presentation. And we will address, there will be additional time and plenty of time to answer your questions after we go through the slides. But as I said, please use the chat box for questions. That'll be the main feature today. On this call, I will start by covering the basics of the Davidson Fellowship Program and how the application process works, as well as provide a few grant writing tips and additional resources. We will hear from Rebecca Ellen, the manager of the North Carolina National Estuarine Research Reserve System, who will talk about the importance of connecting with your reserve of interest to discuss your project's relevance to the reserve management needs. And then we will open the floor to your questions. Let's get started. Since this is a fellowship program, it offers a more comprehensive career development approach than simply providing funding for research. Being part of the 2-year cohort of Davidson Fellows offers students the opportunity to work on projects that address key coastal management questions to help scientists and communities understand challenges that may influence future policy and management strategies, participate in NOAA-provided career-focused training and professional development opportunities, setting them up for success as fellows complete their degree, build their professional contacts with the fellowship class of 29, plus the other professionals across the reserve system, NOAA and community partners. Fellows develop relationships with trained mentors at each reserve through a mentoring program coordinated by our NOAA team, and fellows bring universities, communities, and reserves together on common priorities. Each fellow will be in place for 2 years, working on research projects that support the priorities of each specific reserve, tackling place-based, meaningful strategic issues. And each award is managed through a cooperative agreement between the fellow's university and NOAA. Each fellow's project will involve collaborative research to address a key coastal management question to help scientists and communities in and around a reserve site. The full list of research questions that are priorities for each reserve is available on our website, but here are a few topic examples, and there are many more. It is important to note that there are a variety of ways you can design your project to answer these research questions, with a number of these questions relying on both natural and social science approaches to address relevant coastal management issues. The National Estuarine Research Reserve System is a network of 29 reserves around the nation focused on estuary and community health. The green dots here show the location of each reserve, with some liberties regarding the geographic scale for Alaska, Puerto Rico, and Hawaii. At these coastal sites, fieldwork, research, and community engagement come together to create the scientific advances that change our communities and our coasts. The reserve system is national in scope, so there is a great potential for transfer of fellowship project outcomes to other areas of the country. And one of the greatest proponents of this system from its inception was former NOAA leader, Margaret Davidson. And this fellowship honors her legacy. Margaret saw the future with clarity and knew how to push for innovation and was well known for really shaking things up. She defined excellence in many categories and raised the bar to help coastal communities thrive. This approach is what NOAA and the research reserves are striving to achieve with the Margaret A. Davidson Graduate Fellowship Program. In addition to their research projects, the fellows will be taking part over 2 years in trainings, workshops, and conferences around the country, as well as being part of a mentoring program with staff at their reserve. NOAA will work with the 29 fellows after they are selected to make sure the focus is on topical areas that are relevant to each fellow. Some examples from the first cohort include training in collaborative science, project management and planning, and science communication. NOAA is also working closely with all reserve staff to establish and train a strong cohort of mentors to provide guidance and enhance each fellow's learning during the program. Fellows will also receive additional career boosting through the professional connections they will establish during the 2 years. Fellows will work with community leaders and scientists on collaborative research projects, interact regularly with the fellowship cohort of 29 graduate students for shared learning and relationship building, and make connections with professionals across the entire reserve system and NOAA partners by attending the annual Reserve System National Meeting. NOAA and the reserves are also looking forward to new or strengthened university partnerships with graduate programs focused on topics that support current coastal challenges. And all projects will be taking the approach of user-driven, collaborative research that addresses coastal management issues critical to each reserve. Involving, communicating, and collaborating with stakeholders from beginning to end of the project to make more seamless the transfer and applicability of the project results. The website link on this slide is managed by the NEAR's Science Collaborative Program and offers resources to help prospective applicants plan and implement collaborative research projects. In addition to conducting their research project, fellows will also be expected to understand the ecology, mission, and capabilities of their host reserve and the reserve system. This will include participating in other programs at the reserve, traveling each year to the annual reserve system meeting, and staying in contact with their mentor and other reserve staff through the 2 years. And so that was a quick overview of the program. Now I'm going to provide some details about the mechanics of how the application process works. Right now, we are in the application period, which will be every other year. So the next round of applications will happen in 2023. The final date to submit an application package for this competitive process is December 10th, 2021, after which NOAA and the reserves will undertake a formal merit-based review and recommend one candidate for each reserve. Pending appropriations, that student will be notified in late spring, early summer, and will start their 2-year fellowship August 1st, 2022. Applicants who are eligible to apply for this program must be admitted to or enrolled in master's or doctoral program at a U.S. accredited college or university, be a full-time student, and be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident of the U.S. states or territories. It is recommended that applicants should have completed a majority of their graduate coursework prior to the beginning of the fellowship in order to have time to fully participate in the activities of the reserve and the professional development opportunities that are expected of each fellow. And now for the financial support. Since the cooperative agreement is between NOAA and your university, the annual funding amount is sent to your university to then distribute to you. Budgets can include up to $45,000 in direct costs each year over the 2-year period to cover an annual stipend, tuition, travel, and supplies. NOAA has additional funds to cover university indirect costs so that those requirements will not impact the money going to the student. Each year, the reserves will also receive NOAA fellowship funding of $7,000 to support fellowship project needs. Lost my mouse there for a second. All applicants must work with their university's sponsored programs office to submit an application through grants.gov. We recommend connecting with your university grants representative well in advance of the deadline. Applications will be evaluated based on their technical merit and how well the research proposal aligns with the reserve's management priorities. Merit-based reviewers will evaluate proposals based on these criteria. I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca Ellen, the manager for the North Carolina NEAR system, for a few minutes because she can talk about this first bullet, the importance of aligning your projects to the reserve management needs much better than I can. Rebecca, if you don't mind turning on your camera. Appreciate it. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Chris. As Chris mentioned, I'm Rebecca Ellen, and I'm the manager of the North Carolina National Estuarine Research Reserve, and I'm really happy to join you all today. So this first point on the slide, relevance of the project to reserve needs, is critical. This is a very important part of the fellowship program, and making sure that the projects that you're submitting address reserve management needs in a meaningful way for the reserve and its end users is really important. This is reflected as the importance of this is reflected in the evaluation process, and as such, the way your project addresses one or more of the management needs is assessed in both the merit and the panel reviews of the fellowship program. So during the merit review, up to 25 points may be awarded for how projects meet one or more of the reserve management needs. And then during the panel review, how the project approach and outcomes address the management need or needs to provide value to the reserve and the end users is one of 3 criteria that will be evaluated by the expert panel. The panel is assembled by each reserve, and it includes individuals that have a familiarity with the reserve management needs, the resources, and capabilities at the reserve, and they may include reserve staff. So it allows for a closer look at how the project that you're proposing addresses those needs. So you can obviously read the management needs in the RFP, but it's really important to go beyond that and have a conversation with the reserve. We strongly encourage you to reach out to the host reserve to discuss the feasibility of your project idea to help ensure that your project appropriately addresses one or more of the needs, and then to also identify resources at the reserve that may support your project implementation. This is an important way to start your relationship with the reserve. Reach out to the reserve point of contact to discuss your idea. This will give you a better sense of what the reserve is looking for to address the management need. And this conversation is going to help you better assess whether or not your project idea is a good fit with the need and allow you to better address these evaluation criteria within your proposal. We want you to reach out to us, and we're ready to have these conversations with you. And so please don't hesitate to reach out to those points of contact. Additionally, in these conversations, you can learn more about the resources that reserves have available that can support you and your project. These may include related projects that have been conducted or are underway, relevant data that the reserve has that may be important to include that could actually reduce the amount of data you need to collect or allow you to fill in another gap or niche in the overall question or need to be addressed. We can also provide you guidance on site selection, what aspects of the reserve might be most appropriate for you to focus on for your question, given things like access and boats and where monitoring stations are. So we can provide you that in-depth look at the reserve and how you might be able to tap into the resources that we have. So Chris mentioned also the collaborative research approach, and this is another important piece of the fellowship program. Using this approach ensures the relevancy of the project to the management need, and it's a unique approach that the National Estuarine Research Reserve System has in conducting research. So as you're aware, this includes involving end users and stakeholders throughout the process. And the reserves have experience in conducting research in this way. And through the conversations that you have with reserve staff, staff can help you think through this process and how it may work best for your proposal. We can help you identify additional end users, connect you to stakeholder groups that already exist that may be relevant to help you, and also help you think through that approach to conduct that end-to-end engagement with the stakeholders and end users. This is an important part of the evaluation of the proposals as well. In the merit review, up to 20 points is available for outreach and education, and that's where the collaborative research approach is described in the review process. So overall, I just can't stress enough the importance of you taking the time to think through your project idea and connecting it to those management needs and having that follow-up conversation with the reserve itself to help make sure that it's a good overall fit. It will be value added for you to help ensure that your time and energy that you put into the proposal is best used, and also a great way to start that relationship with the reserve. That's all that I have for now, Chris. Thank you.
Oh, I keep showing up really big. Yeah, thank you, Rebecca, for joining us today. It's the reserve staff offers such a tremendous opportunity to support potential applicants and have a lot to contribute to the proposal development process. So thank you for coming to join us and talk about the importance of that step. The remaining evaluation criteria on this slide are all listed in the funding opportunity for this fellowship. Please note, there are no surprises when it comes to the scoring criteria. The funding opportunity specifically states the scoring percentages for each weighted criteria and provides clear instructions for scoring ranges that the reviewers will use as a guide. So what you see in the funding opportunity in terms of how proposals will be scored is exactly what the reviewers will be seeing as well. Now, we are under no delusion that applying for federal grants isn't intimidating. So hopefully these grant writing tips help remove some of that intimidation. The Office for Coastal Management also offers links to additional resources that can be accessed by visiting the website listed at the bottom of this slide and also pasted in the chat box. And I did notice a couple of comments in the chat asking if the webinar is being recorded because some people are having some audio issues. Yes, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the Davidson Fellowship website afterwards. So first, read the funding opportunity in its entirety. These are long documents because there is a lot of required legal text, and so it is easy to miss application requirements. Pay particular attention to the program priorities, application content, and application review sections. Read those more than once and make your own checklist of the required application materials. Second, evaluate your own proposal using the evaluation criteria in the funding opportunity. Or have someone else evaluate your proposal who knows nothing about your project. For example, a university faculty or classmate. Make sure you evaluate your proposal only by what you have explicitly written in the application, since that is what the reviewers will have to go from. Be explicit. That is, don't leave it up to the reviewers to interpret what you were trying to say. How do reviewers know you have a good track record? How do they know that you will be successful without you justifying why in your proposal, why you'll be successful? Can the reviewers clearly identify and understand the objectives of your project? Can they connect your project objectives to one of the reserve management priorities? Can reviewers clearly understand how you are going to achieve those objectives? Are your project objectives realistic to achieve within the fellowship timeframe? Be as specific as possible and leave no room for interpretation. Fourth, have realistic goals. You're not trying to save the world here. Your goal should be to design and execute a successful project that is achievable in the given time frame and allows you to grow and adapt as a coastal professional as you engage with reserve staff and the community. As you learn more about collaborative science and start to have conversations with reserve staff and community stakeholders, you will inevitably reshape aspects of your project as you progress through your fellowship. And so keeping your goals realistic and achievable makes it easier to adapt to potential changes and challenges. Have a robust, accurate, and complete budget narrative. Cross-check, and what I mean by that is cross-check your budget item to its project activities and vice versa. For example, do you have project activities with no visible budget item associated with it, like a workshop with no money for a venue, or traveling to the NEARS annual meeting but you didn't include money for transportation from the airport to your hotel? Thinking of we understand you won't have every single detail within your budget narrative related to your project, but thinking through some of these gaps as it relates to your project will allow you to have a more robust and accurate budget. And there is an example budget form in our frequently asked questions that we link to on our website. You can find the link to that there to help you with that. And finally, reach out with questions as early as you have them. We have a lot of resources on our website, but if you can't find the answer to your question, please reach out. Reserve staff are a tremendous on-the-ground resource to answer any questions you have about your projects. Keep in mind that to avoid a conflict of interest, many reserve staff cannot review and comment on a written version of your proposal. But verbal conversations, as Rebecca was highlighting, about the relevance of your project to the reserve needs and identifying ways the reserve can support your project or connect you to relevant stakeholders and partners in the community are welcomed and highly encouraged. And my final slide, here's what you do to get an application in for this fellowship. Read the priority management needs that we have linked on our website, and reach out to the contact listed for any project or site you are interested in. If you're feeling like this would be a great match for you, develop the proposal and work with your university to submit the application for funding online through grants.gov. And it is important that it is the university that is submitting your application on your behalf through grants.gov. And that is what we thought you would want to know. Now, we'd love to hear what else you want to know that we haven't covered today. And as a reminder, there is more information and frequently asked questions on our website, as well as the recording will be posted on our website for future reference. And at this point, I will open the floor to your questions. And again, I am very large. Okay. So
Yeah, there's a
it looks
question, Chris, as far as the questions we haven't answered yet in chat, there's one from Roger is the next one kind of on deck to answer.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So the question is it necessary to apply to a reserve location near where we live, or can we pitch projects for any reserve? And will local applicants be prioritized? So local applicants will not be prioritized. There isn't a evaluation criteria for where you are located to the reserve. You can apply to any reserve that you're interested in. Will say that being closer to a reserve makes it easier to fully integrate with that reserve. So this being a fellowship program, part of the emphasis of the program is being able to integrate with the reserve and collaborate with the various sectors at each reserve site. And so being closer allows you more access to that reserve. That being said, there are a couple of fellows who are based in a different state from where their reserve site is. And so if you feel really strongly about a project at a reserve in a different state, you are eligible to apply. And if you are thinking that you might apply to multiple reserves, you need to submit a separate application for each reserve. Thank you for that question.
Awesome. And the next one is from Kyle about the required meetings and how that might impact their budget planning.
Mm-hmm. Is there somewhere we can get more info? So the question is there somewhere we can get more information on the NEAR's annual meetings? Oh, removed it from my view. Yes, so there's within the funding opportunity, it specifies that you should plan in the first year to attend the NEAR's annual meeting and a professional conference in the second year as required networking and professional development experience. Melissa, I don't believe that we have we do have a location set for the NEAR's annual meeting.
Yeah, it's Seattle.
Seattle. Yes, so NEAR's annual in 2022 will take place in Seattle, Washington. Oh, there's the rest of the question. And the meeting is usually, I would anticipate about a week. But more information will be provided. as it gets closer. Melissa, feel free to chime in if I missed anything. Shannon, NEAR's annual meeting is usually in November and lasts 4 to 5 days. Thank you, Shannon.
Yeah, so there's the next question about, is there a guideline or a template for a data management?
Great question. So there's some general guidance in the funding opportunity. We don't have a specific template for you because data management plans can vary. So there isn't a required template that you have to fit into. But we do provide guidance on the types of information to include within the data management plan within the funding opportunity. Thank you. Next one is, yeah, I can read the next one. Is it possible to have a full-time job while having the fellowship? The fellowship is intended to be pretty time intensive. There's an expectation to integrate within the reserve system. There is flexibility around if you do have the need for a full-time job. However, that's the intent of providing a stipend, is so you don't have to have a full-time job while participating in the fellowship. So if you have more questions around that, feel free to reach out to us. We have our email listed on the slide here. If you have more questions around your specific scenario, but the idea being that the stipend is hopefully supplementing the need to have a job so you can fully integrate within the fellowship program. Next question, I was hoping for a little clarification. The fellowship is 2 years long during our MS or PhD program, but we're advised to have completed all required coursework before starting the fellowship. So it is a recommendation, however, not a requirement to be eligible to apply. Understanding that many fellows will be at various stages. Some within the current cohort are earlier on and are still participating in coursework. Others are a little further along in their studies, and so they aren't taking as much coursework and are able to more fully integrate. So it really is a case-by-case scenario. It's our recommendation so you can take advantage of the many professional development opportunities and other opportunities at your specific reserve. So while it is not a requirement, we encourage students, if possible, to have finished the majority of their coursework so they can focus on their research and professional development opportunities. Next question. All the materials mentioned, the university will send you the document, letter of support. Where do I tell the recommenders to submit it or to send it to which email? So I would work with your university Office of Sponsored Programs, since they will be submitting the application on your behalf and uploading those documents into grants.gov. Figure out within your university Office of Sponsored Programs who you can tell your recommenders to send the letters of support to. If you have further questions on that or any of these, feel free to reach out to us. I'm not seeing any other questions on deck, but keep them coming. Hopefully these answers have been helpful. Melissa or Jean or Rebecca, if there's any clarification that any of you would like to provide on some of these responses to any of these questions, I welcome your input as well.
I don't have any additional. These are some great questions. Thank you guys for sticking around and coming and asking these things. Yeah, we probably have a couple more coming in, Chris, with people typing right now.
Okay, great. Looks like another question. How big was the last applicant pool, and what percentage of applicants received a fellowship? So the applicant pool last time was around 100 applications received, and so 29 of those received a fellowship. So conveniently, it was about 29%. Any specific advice for master's students is another question. Sundance, do you mind clarifying in terms of the timeline of the fellowship, or looking for resources on how to apply? Wondering if you could provide a little more clarification around what you're looking for in your question. And to those who are listening in, there was another question. I want to make sure I heard correctly. My signal is a little weak. NEAR's annual meeting in 2022 will be in Seattle. And so yes, that is confirmed, 2022 in Seattle for your budgeting purposes.
We do have several master students in the current cohort, Sundance, if that helps. And that if you wanted more detail on that, you could, get in touch with one of us outside of the call. But yeah, it looks like you're typing up a clarification on that question. So thanks for that. Chris, you've got one more question while we're waiting to hear from Sundance.
Yes, for the CV, is there a limit? Is there a page limit for the document? Off the top of my head, I think it's 2 pages. The funding opportunity will specifically lay out the page limit. The page limits are it's a page max for the funding opportunity specifically says the page limits. I will say if your proposal goes over the page limit that's specified in the funding opportunity, I want to say it's 7 pages, 5 for the project narrative. Then any pages over the limit specified in the funding opportunity will be removed from your application before being passed on to reviewers. So please try to keep your applications within the stated page limits in the funding opportunity. Sundance providing more clarification, just thinking about the timeline, 15 credits into a 45 credit master's program. So yeah, Sundance, like I said, we encourage the majority of the coursework to be completed, but it's not a requirement to apply or even be successful in the program. The more time that you can devote to the professional development and integrating with the reserve pieces, the more that you can potentially get out of the program. And so that's the reason for that recommendation. But there are those who manage their time well to do both coursework and the professional development and integrating with the reserve activities. And so it's doable. It's kind of up to you of what you would like to get out of the fellowship program outside of your research project. You're welcome. Transcript I have for my bachelor and master program at different university and now for PhD. I will upload. Is that okay to include all transcripts even though they're from different universities? Yes. Please do. Like I said, you want to be as specific and clear in your application as you can. You don't want to leave any room for interpretation for reviewers. So including all of the transcripts further supports your ability to be successful in your project. You're welcome. These are great questions. Thank you. Please keep them coming. Okay. It looks like questions might be slowing down. Like I said, you can always contact us at the email listed there, ocm.davidsonfellowship@noaa.gov. You can visit our website. We have plenty of resources on our website. And on the website, there's the reserve management priorities that are listed with points of contact for each of those as well to reach out specifically to the reserves who, as we stated, a great on-the-ground resource for talking about your project. And so with that, I would like to thank Rebecca, Ellen, for joining us and providing those perspectives on the importance of talking to the reserves, reaching out. People want to hear from you if you have questions and are there to help. And would like to thank Melissa and Jean from our NOAA team for joining us and helping with answering questions. Shannon, thank you for being a fantastic producer as always. And thank you all for joining us today. Please reach out with any other questions.